Hi again, everybody. My name is Greg Anderson, and this is the Good Timekeeping Show with Greg Anderson. So today I wanted to talk about the mod community. Okay, and I don't mean, those guys back in the late 60s and early 70s, those mods. No, I'm talking about people who like to modify watches, especially Casio watches, because, you can get Casio watches for relatively low prices, and there may be a lot of support out there for the mod community, some people that would offer parts and pieces and advice on how to modify your Casio, third-party stuff, and you can make some really unique watches, starting with kind of off-the-shelf Casios. So I wanted to talk about one of the more unusual mods, and this was something that I was not aware of until just a few months ago, and I didn't mention it at first, but if you've never heard of this, I thought I should introduce you to the hydro mod. Now, when I first heard of the hydro mod, I thought, what does that mean? Hydro, is that like water? Something to do with water and your Casio watch? Well, usually not water, but something with the same kind of density as water, maybe some sort of special oil. So just in a nutshell, what you do is you take the empty space inside your watch that would normally be full of air, and you fill that up with oil, and all the rest of the stuff inside the watch case remains the same, but now there's no air in there, it's all oil. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, there are a few reasons, and a couple that stick out primarily as far as I can tell. First of all, it changes the look of the watch. So imagine I've got a spoon, okay? And if I just show you the spoon, okay, it's got its own look, right? Okay. If I put the spoon into a glass that's full of air, and now a spoon, then it changes the look just a little bit. But if I fill that glass with water and then put the spoon in the water in the glass, that changes the look a little bit more dramatically. And that's basically what people are doing when they modify a watch to do the hydro mod. It changes the look. And so one thing that it does is it kind of makes the face of the watch look like it's closer to the surface of the crystal. So just kind of bringing that up. So that's a very unique look, especially if you look at it at certain angles. Suddenly it looks like, that there's that, the face is just pushed forward. So some people really like that look. It may also enhance the colors. It may make the entire face look a little bit sharper. This is kind of people like the aesthetics of the hydro mod. Another thing that it might do, and I don't know if there's any definitive documentation on this, but the hydro mod might actually increase dramatically the water resistance of the watch. So for example, you could start with something like one of these very inexpensive, affordable Casio watches. You can find something like this for about $20, maybe even less if you shop around carefully. So you take one of these watches, you fill all the empty space in it, remove the air and fill that with oil instead, right? And now, instead of being 100-meter water resistance, which it was when it was just off the shelf, stock watch, maybe it's twice that amount, maybe 5 times, maybe 10 times. Imagine, is it possible that this watch could now have a water resistance of, instead of 100 meters, 1 kilometer? I don't know. But anyway, this is another objective of putting oil there instead of air. So imagine this, okay? It's pretty easy to understand that it's easier to compress air than it is to compress water or oil. Right? So now imagine you've got your watch and it's got the different components in there to make it work, and then the rest of it is, just empty space or air. Okay? And then you subject that watch to a great deal of pressure by submerging it in, hundreds of meters of water. Well, then the air inside would compress, theoretically, and the case of the watch could be distorted. Maybe the case back would be kind of concave, pushed in a little bit. Maybe the crystal of the watch would fail, it would crack or shatter because of that force, the force that's coming from the outside and compressing the air inside, and then it fails. Well, what if you had something inside instead of air? You had something that would kind of push back at that force of that pressure and kind of equalize it a little bit, and therefore make the watch more resistant to that water pressure. That is something that people are achieving with this hydro mod. And I guess maybe a third primary reason for wanting to have a hydro mod on your watch is it's something you can do yourself. You know, it maybe takes a little bit of trial and error. Maybe on the difficulty scale, it's not exactly the easiest thing to do. But if you watch some of the videos of people showing you what they've done and how they did it, you may decide it's something you might be able to handle. So therefore, it's a fun project you can do. Doesn't cost you a great deal of money, may take some extra patience, and when it's done, you have a very unique watch in your collection that just kind of, you know, it's just different. It's something you just can't just buy. So those are some of the reasons you might want to try the hydro mod. Now, I'm going to give you some links to some videos, people showing you how they did it. I'm not necessarily endorsing any one of these videos or any one of these methods or any one of these YouTube channels. I'm just going to find some links and say, you know, have a look at this and see what you think of it. And if you want to, you know, you're welcome to do your own searches online. You can go down the rabbit hole, as it were, and figure out if there's any other great videos showing you how to do a hydro mod, and then you can decide whether you want to try it or not. I think I'm not quite ready to try the hydro mod myself, but that doesn't mean I'm necessarily discouraging anyone else from doing it. One of the reasons maybe I wouldn't do it is that it's just a little bit too intense for me. Maybe my eyesight isn't that great looking at small things and fiddling with small things like that. And so, you know, something you can decide. Now, one thing you'll have to do in order to do the hydro mod is you have to open up the watch so you can get in there and get the oil in there. And maybe you'd have to have some sort of special tray of a certain size so you could kind of dunk the watch in oil. Make sure you get every little air bubble out before you put it all back together. And if you do it right and you watch how these other people have done it, you may find some very interesting results. Now when you do this, you might get oil inside all the little nooks and crannies of the case on the outside, maybe inside the bezel, these sorts of things. And so it may be that after you've done the hydro mod, you're going to spend a few days with just a little bit of oil all around the watch, clean it up as well as you can, and then when you turn the bezel, maybe a little bit more oil comes out, you know. But it should contain the oil, because since it was water resistant before you did the hydro mod, it should contain the oil inside there. Once you've cleaned it up well and, you know, let anything kind of seep around the edges for a few days, I would think that it won't continue to leak oil for the long term. Now, one thing to consider, you might be thinking, well, if this thing is full of oil when it used to be full of air, would the mechanism of that quartz movement have trouble running at the same speed? Because obviously the oil is you know, thicker than the air. Would that change that? And from what I can tell, a lot of people that do this, they report that actually, you know, it seems to keep time just as accurately as it did before. So, you know, something to consider. And you can keep watching those videos and find out if people have any long-term results on that. Maybe you're thinking, well, this sounds like a great idea. Maybe I'll do it with my mechanical watch. Instead of a quartz watch, I'll do it with a mechanical watch, a wind-up watch, or an automatic mechanical watch. Actually, that is not recommended because there are a lot more moving pieces in your mechanical watch, and being, you know, submerged in oil probably would cause those to move at different speeds than they should, and your watch would not keep correct time if it were a standard mechanical watch. But if it's a quartz watch, battery powered watch, chances are, even with the case full of oil, it's going to run normally, and it's going to look different, and it's going to be, you know, perhaps a lot of fun for you to enjoy. What about when it's time to change the battery? Because we know that with a standard quartz watch, after 2 or 3 years, it's time to change the battery. Then what do? Well, you're going to have to open up that case again in order to reach the battery, and you know, then it's going to be all slippery, but you can do it, I'm sure. Change the battery and sort of almost repeat the entire process of making sure there are no air bubbles left in there and closing it up again, and then having your, you know, again, your hydro mod watch. So keep that in mind. And you may also be thinking, well, what if I try this and I decide I don't like it and I want to put the watch back to normal, get all the oil out? I don't think that's really possible, because now you got oil on all these tiny components, and I don't think you'll be able to reach every little bit and wipe it out and do that. So I would say, you know, plan carefully. Make sure it's a watch that if you don't like the results, it's not going to be a heartbreaker. And maybe, again, practice on a watch that is very inexpensive. The nice thing about starting with like a $20 Casio and a little bit of oil that probably won't cost you very much either, is that, yes, it takes some time, it takes some effort, and it takes just a little bit of money to get the pieces to do this. But you could probably do it without wasting a lot of time and money. Even if the thing is a complete fiasco, you'll be all right. So I would say start, if you've got your eyes on a very expensive watch and want to do a hydro mod, start with something inexpensive, see how it goes before you take, you know, your most precious, expensive watch and try the hydro mod on that. So those are some of my thoughts on the hydro mod. If you've done it and, you know, and you like the results or you don't like the results, go ahead and leave comments. Maybe if you've made a video about it, leave a link to your video and we'll see how it went for you. Again, I think it's a neat idea, an intriguing idea. I might try it someday. I'm just not quite ready to try it now, but I wanted you to still know about the whole concept of the hydro mod, again, in case that's something that appeals to you. You know, when it comes to modifying my watches, you know, I maybe would change a strap, change a, you know, watch bracelet or a bezel. You know, I do a few little things like that. Nothing quite as intense as a hydro mod. But I also have a lot of different Casio watches. So probably I've already pretty much got the variety I want, and I'm not really itching for some extreme new variety of Casio watch. So holding off for now. We'll see what happens in the future. And that's all for today. I hope you will join me, I hope next week, for another episode of The Good Timekeeping Show.